Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Property Lifestyle Mastery. We're having open conversations about building a property business that creates cash flow and freedom, and the highs, lows and lessons along the way. So on today's episode, I'm going to be welcoming Dom and Dave to talk about the biggest enemy to growth in your business. And it's probably not what you think. Now, these guys came off recording this episode absolutely buzzing, and they extended the length of it because they just felt it was just such a valuable conversation that needed to be heard. So they're talking about the concept of limiting beliefs. What are those? I didn't think I had those. Me and Dave would never have considered those a thing. But actually, by shining a light more on this area within ourselves, we've realised how much we've been truly holding ourselves back through the subconscious limiting beliefs and self-talk that's in place. Now, you might relate to the fact that you can't relate to that, and so I do implore you to sit and be open to this conversation, because I think if I'd have been able to be a fly on the wall of this conversation a few years ago, it would have saved me a lot of time, worry and pain. So you're really going to love this one. So strap in. Here is Dom and Dave.
Right. Hello, Dom.
Hello, Dave. Good to see you. And lovely background, blue sky and everything else.
Yeah, we're in France at the moment, so really nice. Really lovely location. It's sunny. And we have got a juicy topic today. I'm actually really excited about this one, Dom. And I think I hope it's going to be really powerful for people listening, because, it's part of contextually where we're at is you and I, we're onto another Mindset Mastery episode here. We're trying to help people to empower themselves to become the best version of themselves and be able to fulfill their potential as a human being and in business and in life. And obviously what we've gone through so far is we've covered an episode on awareness, on becoming self-aware, and what does that mean, and kind of, in theory, the first step to solving a problem is identifying the problem. That's what we covered last time.
Yeah.
And now we're going to talk about what that problem is. And in theory, I think I was saying to you just before this, we started that what we're going to talk about today is actually almost step one, because it's very impossible to identify a problem if you don't even know what a problem is.
Right.
You don't know if there is a problem because you don't even know that there are problems and what they could be. So today's episode, I think, is going to be hopefully very enlightening to people, because we're going to be identifying that problem, what we see in ourselves, what we see in others. What is the thing that holds people back? This is it, right?
Yeah. All those limiting beliefs, those subconscious ways of thinking, the lack of awareness, all of those things are areas that hold us back. But yeah, it's the unknown unknowns. We don't know about it until we learn about it, and then we're unconsciously getting competent about it. But anyway.
Exactly. So in terms of this episode, it's all about overcoming our limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And in theory, I guess my first thing I wanted to clarify is, what do we mean by limiting beliefs?
Yes.
What is it? I mean, do you want to give your opinion on what you think?
Limiting beliefs, it's ways of thinking that hold us back, that stop us from doing all the things that we could potentially achieve if we, here's the thing, believed it was possible. And so actually the definition of mindset by a chap called Jim Quick, who wrote Limitless, and he's a bit of a genius. It is our way of thinking about the world, what we think is possible in the world, what we think is possible for us. But so many people, partly due to their conditioning, when I say conditioning, it's all the stuff you've learnt, the culture you've been brought up in, the family, that, their beliefs and how it's impacted and imprinted on you. All of these things have an impact on your outlook on the world and what you think is possible for you. So a quick example, if you come from a relatively wealthy background, you tend to carry on being a relatively wealthy person, because it's kind of, that's not an issue in your life. Money is just one of those things, you work hard for and it comes. Whereas someone who's maybe come from a very poor background, for them to make a big leap, effectively, a psychological leap into being a wealthy individual, is a harder task, because they didn't have that program. They had the programming of potentially poverty in their life. So all of those things that have conditioned us over our life to date cause us to have ways of thinking that stop us from achieving and believing that it's even possible.
So it's really and I think a lot of other people talk about this as your kind of your blueprint, your
Yes.
personality blueprint that's in place and that controls your destiny in theory, because then you have to change the blueprint to get a different future. And I always like to think about it as, the people who are most successful in life. There's some people who we just all know of and we're very aware of their success, the Richard Bransons of the world, the Elon Musks of the world.
Yes.
And so often with those type of people, you actually look into the metrics that make up their personality that we all consider to be important metrics, their IQ and their upbringing, and their environment where did they learn, the universities, all of these classic metrics that we would think are forging our destiny, and their metrics are zero different to anyone else. And actually what's happened is that during their growth there just happens to have been a set of circumstances and experiences that has crafted their belief system to enable that level of success. And it doesn't come down to intelligence, because those with high IQ so often aren't successful.
Right.
It doesn't come down to your knowledge and the things that you learn about. It's so often just they happen to have reached a life circumstance where the experiences of their life crafted a belief system that had minimal limiting beliefs,
Right.
and maximal beliefs that create unlimited potential.
Right.
And that's where it just all comes together. It's like the perfect storm.
Yeah.
So step number one for those of us mere mortals who want to follow more of a successful pathway is just work out what are we thinking, what is it that we're doing that's different to them, that is a limiting factor that's holding us back. And actually I think, just to kind of really encapsulate this concept of limiting beliefs, we're calling them limiting beliefs here. In theory, I think they're synonymous with the other term, which is self-sabotage. Because for me, a limiting belief is a belief you have which causes you to take an action that sabotages your success.
Yes.
So we have a blueprint, a way of being that has been designed from our history. Our historical experience has imprinted this belief in us that then causes us to take specific actions because of that belief, that those actions aren't necessarily meaning that we are successful, which means we're sabotaging our success, which is the definition of self-sabotage, right?
Yeah.
And in theory, all of this, the self-sabotage and the limiting beliefs, the system, and I want to get you to just give us your bigger picture perspective on this. It all stems from our survival mechanism as a human being, because in theory, from the moment of birth through to our final kind of personality development, we are developing on the basis of our survival instincts, which is pretty much a development based on fear.
Right, exactly. Part of the brain, the oldest part of the brain, the amygdala, where it's all about risk and what's going to kill us because we don't want to die. Whereas now we live in a world where we're relatively safe, and actually we don't need to be worrying about that in the same way. So ultimately the deepest fear that everyone has, if you keep asking someone why they're not doing something, why, it gets to the nub of it, which is basically fear of death, and or fear of failure, rejection, so it's those deep held fears. And as other people have said, fear is false expectations appearing real. It isn't real. It's something we're projecting into the future. And one of the habits I've seen that successful people do is that they tend to literally run towards their fear and just see it as something to overcome. And that's one of the big characteristic differences between people who are successful and people who aren't. And I realized that only a couple of months ago, actually, that the things I feared the most, 1, public speaking, 2, selling, 3, raising finance, are all things I've basically run towards to overcome and conquer. And in my own way, own little way, I'm running towards them and dealing with them by deciding not to be afraid of them.
That's wonderful. And I know I hear Jackie on a lot of sessions with our clients, and nowadays, it's always regularly, at least 3 times a week, I'm hearing a session that's to do with what's holding them back, right? It's not technical help, it's not telling them what to do, it's literally finding out what's holding them back. And so often I hear her talking about this. You talk about running towards fear, she talks about it in a different slightly different way, which I think is, some people might relate to, is when you come across an uncomfortable emotion, one that seems to be forcing you down a particular pathway, and whatever that emotion might be bringing up that emotion, doesn't matter what it is. The point is, as soon as you get that uncomfortable emotion, the job is not to let it dictate your path. The job is actually to sit down and look at that emotion, sit with it and really stare into it, feel it through your body and say, what is this? Where is it coming from? Why is this, trying to tell me what to do? And that is the same as, it's running towards your fears, because every fear creates a sense of uncomfortableness inside of us. It starts to try and guide us through telling us, oh no, that's something you don't want to do, and it makes you feel uncomfortable about it, and that creates a physiological sensation that is guiding us. And in theory, every time you feel that, you have an option. You either follow its guidance and do what it's telling you to do, i.e. don't take action, or say a particular thing, one thing instead of something else to someone because you're scared of saying the thing you think you might want to say. Doesn't matter what it is. The job is to, instead of just following that emotion, sit down and look at it and say, where is this coming from?
Yes, exactly.
It so often actually it's coming from nothing. Like it doesn't mean anything what it feels in there. You can't even tell where it's coming from because it's your history.
It's right. It's your programming. And so in short, the thing that I always remember is that all fears are fears of feelings. And so you've just alluded to, sitting and paying attention to the feeling. So how do you do that then, Dave? What's a practical advice for the listeners about how do you differentiate between thinking and feeling? And how do you identify what the feeling is? Because we have so many feelings, right? And sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And it's just like, how do you spot it, and what do you do to overcome it?
So true. We have an episode on this anyway, but for me, meditation is the answer. It's the moment. Meditation can do so many things for you, but at the very primal level, it gives you a moment every single day, if you do it every single day, to assess yourself and learn what the status quo is, learn how you feel when you're in any given state, and bring yourself from wherever you start the meditation, bring yourself to a sense of neutrality, of baseline neutrality. The more you become aware of what neutral is, the more you're aware of when you're not at neutral. So you're able to spot it and identify it immediately. As soon as I identify that I'm not at neutral, that there is a feeling there, as you put it, that the body is sending me signals, I never, and this is the advice I give to clients as well, I never allow the thoughts to then take control. Because our process is, as a human being, that we have a feeling and the brain starts to rationalize it straight away. And what we do as a normal kind of unthinking individual, I say unthinking as in unaware individual, is that we then just listen to the brain, and we take it as that's the most important thing. That's definitely telling us the truth. We take it as fact that our brain is the most important thing, and then you're into a spiral. You're into a spiral of the brain starting to rationalize the feeling, the emotion, and then the emotion reacts to the brain's thoughts. So we all know it when you start thinking, oh, that thing really annoyed me, and actually, why did it annoy me? It annoyed me because he did this, this, and this, and then actually the emotions respond and they get stronger. And that's what I call the spiral, because you're strengthening the emotion, and then the stronger emotion creates more thoughts, and then you create more strong emotions, and you're just heading down the pit. For me, the job is stop that as soon as don't allow it to start. The thoughts are, as soon as I have the feeling, I don't allow that to happen, and I immediately will either just finish off what I'm doing and then find a time to go and sit with that feeling. But if I feel like those thoughts are coming, I won't listen to them until I can just sit down and deal with the feeling. And what happens every time is, once you've dealt with the feeling, the thoughts change. They're different afterwards. And it's only I guess I got some great advice once that was just never ever make a decision in anger, right? We know that one. But it's also just never ever make a decision, a proper big decision for yourself when you're in any emotional state that is not neutral. In theory, if you're in a excessive emotional state, then you're not in the right shape to be making good decisions, because your thoughts are coming from the wrong place.
Yes, indeed.
So,
although sometimes you can have a heightened emotion and you're really excited and happy, and then people can sometimes make decisions at that point too.
right.
So yeah, it's because sometimes that's the energy that is needed to push us forward outside of our normal comfort zone, because some people just live in fear the whole time, right? So they kind of almost not making decisions. But when they go, for example, just been on last weekend, a Tony Robbins event, when the emotions are massive, and people remember those things because the emotions are so strong, and they make decisions there. They're going to commit to their new vision, their life that they want to achieve. Yeah, so is that good or is that bad? I mean, because you mentioned being
right.
in a neutral state.
I think there are two sides to that, for my opinion. You're completely right that getting yourself into a great emotional state can be a really good place to make amazing decisions for your life. And the reason for that is that if you are in a supremely happy state, then the decisions you make are supposedly going to keep you down that path towards more happiness. However, I do think that the more we are off of center, the more further we are away from our center. So if you've gone to a really powerful event, and we are talking about positive emotions, because I think the primary thing I would say across the board is making decisions from a negative state will always be negative.
There we go.
Really the wrong thought process is happening. So, but then talking about a really high emotional positive state, it's not that I don't think you should make decisions from a positive state. It's the fact that how far away are you from your natural state of being? And if you've gone to an event like Tony Robbins and your normal state of being is quite, you could say on the side of surly, for example.
Right.
And general state of being, because that's everyone has a natural state that they revert to. They always come back to the standard state their body is comfortable with. That's what you are. And if you've gone to an event and you're just like super off this planet in an amazing emotional state, all those chemicals are running through you, you're basically drugged up with your own hormones. You're going to be making decisions at that moment that are not necessarily compatible with your normal state of being. Right. And the only way for you to follow them through with real commitment is if you can somehow keep pushing yourself up to a more elevated state, which it means you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to commit to decisions that aren't conducive with how you normally are. And the only way to make them conducive is to continually try and push yourself up there in some way or another. It makes it very hard.
Yeah, but that kind of alludes to how do we elevate effectively our state and our basically our belief systems, those overcome those negative thoughts and beliefs, and continually get ourselves to peak states, as psychologists call them, peak states on a regular basis. And it does make me think of something we use quite a lot, which is Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And there's a level, below it is fear and anger and apathy and grief and all those negative things. And above that level is courage. You choose to be courageous in the face of fear. You're willing to see what's going to happen. You're accepting of whatever happens, and you see things with reason. And if anything, you just come at it from a position of love, of seeing both sides and being at peace with whatever happens. And then that's a good state to make decisions from. And they tend to be synchronistic, and magic things can happen when we're in that state. Anyway, so I've just gone off on one about Dr. David Hawkins, the scale of consciousness. But the point is, I thought it was a good transition into, okay, so what do we do to improve our belief systems and and overcome our limiting beliefs? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think in order to answer that question, let's start. I think we need to explore limiting beliefs. What are example limiting beliefs? So I'm going to start with a story of myself. I think that's the whole point of this podcast as well, is for everyone to know that us three up here talking, you, me, Jackie, and any guests we have on, the point is we are all having the same struggles as anyone listening, right? So let me think about my own life and my own limiting beliefs. I've had one clear, strong limiting belief that other people might not see as a limiting belief. So I kind of want to identify things that people don't necessarily notice.
Yes.
That is that I have always believed that in order to be successful, I have to work damn hard.
Right.
Always equated my level of success with how much effort I'm putting in.
Yes.
And I've just kind of seen it as like a necessary path. Oh, if I want to do that, if I want to get to that goal, it's going to be a lot of work. And that graft is what's going to get me there. And And I guess it stems for me in part from my history experience. When I think it through, this limiting belief that I've identified as one of my limiting beliefs, I think it through. I was a musician, and
Right.
it took a lot of practice to get good. And there
Yes.
was a long period in my life where I was just sitting in a practice room, grafting away at my scales, grafting away at just technical proficiency, and just getting that foundation laid, and going through all the lessons where you get to a very critical teacher, and
Yeah.
I get this basic fundamental belief system that I need to just keep working at it. It's hard work, and I just got to keep doing it to get to the technical standard to achieve my goals.
Yes.
Definitely putting me this status where if I'm not working hard, I feel automatically that I'm not going to be successful, that it's therefore I'm not going to reach my goals. Now, looking at this from a bigger perspective, that is a massive sabotage to my happiness. Because I know that we all know that we want to be able to relax, have a nice life, not have to work too hard. Like, if you say what does it mean to you to be happy, like, we obviously have a sort of holiday every 6 weeks, lots of holidays, chilling out, traveling the world. That is literally anathema to work hard. So every time I try to relax, there's something inside of me going, yeah, but if you don't work hard now, you're not working hard right now, you're not going to be successful. You need to work harder. You don't chill out now, because you need to work harder, otherwise you're not going to reach your goals. There is something deep down telling me that, which is fundamentally sabotaging my happiness and my goals, because my goals are to be happy.
Interesting. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? We've got the schooling, work hard and you get good grades. You've had your music, where, strict teachers, and our parents usually, you've got to work hard to get a good job, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people can definitely relate to that. However, I did do a talk the other day on creating flow and enjoying life and mastery. And there is a balance to be had, because I know that you and Jackie work incredibly hard, but you're incredibly efficient and effective when you do work. And because you balance time off with work, and you really are crafting something that you love to do, it no longer feels like quite such hard work, because you're very efficient and effective with it, and you're very good at it. And so it's not that it's not hard work, because absolutely anyone you see who's achieved amazing things tend to have worked quite hard, but they get into a state of flow and they love to master their craft, and that gives them more joy because they're getting good at it, even though in the eyes of other people or even themselves, it's not hard work. They get into a state of flow, and it's more enjoyable work. And I think that's another place that people would love to get to, is that state of flow, loving what they do. And yes, it's kind of, in a way, it's hard work. It's 3-4 hours a day or whatever it might be, but actually you love it because it's really, you can see the results quite quickly, and you enjoy the path, the journey that they're on.
You're so right. And actually, when I was thinking through various limiting beliefs that I've seen in myself and others, every single one, I thought to myself, it's not actually about getting rid of that thing. Right. You're right. It does take work. It does take action, I'm going to say, regular action of a certain amount of time and I'm going to say effort. You have to put effort in to achieve. You can't just sit back doing nothing and success will come. That sitting in an armchair isn't going to do it. But it's all about the balance.
Yes.
And use that word. I think that is key. It's balance and your specific approach to it. And this is where the complexity comes of limited. They are simple things, but the result, what you end up having, the reason we can't identify them is because it creates a complex result. Yes. So it's hard to identify that hard work is causing me to self-sabotage my happiness, because that hard work is required in some ways to create the success. However, it doesn't have to be hard.
Right.
That's what you've identified. State of flow means that you are able to take action, do things from a place that is actually quite enjoyable, creates a feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment, and gets you to an end result that you've spent the time taking the action to get there. Yeah. But during the journey, you're actually able to two things: enjoy the work you're doing. Yeah. And when you stop doing the work, if you can overcome the limiting belief properly, you can take the time off and enjoy that as well.
Right. Yes, exactly. So it makes me think, everyone's always asking about what's the one thing? What's the one thing? It's like, well, actually, it isn't one thing. It's both. It's the balance of both. There is effectively the work or the action, and there's taking the time off. You can't, anyone who's made loads of money from selling their business, got 50 million or whatever it might be, they go on the golf course, they get bored, they're not contributing to life. It's so important. We've got fundamental human needs. We need to contribute, we need to grow, we need to connect with others. All of these things are absolutely fundamental. If we're not doing that, then we get rather bored and stale, which is why work or action is absolutely essential to everyone's well-being and happiness. Okay, so there's one example is that have to work hard. What another example?
No, I'd like to have one from you. Like, what have you seen in your life, like as when you notice something, your belief system that's suddenly holding you back?
Yeah, so as I mentioned on the first episode, basically, very briefly, I was a business advisor, and I went to see 2,500 small businesses, and I thought, I am never running my own business. Oh my goodness, it's so hard. All these failures and difficulties that I see in everyone else. It's kind of safer and more comfortable to have employment, right? So that was one of my beliefs at the time. It was like, I'm never going to run my own business. But then I got to a job that was really horrible, effectively, and that no respect from the leadership, and so I decided to just take the plunge. I handed in my resignation, despite having been offered a promotion, and said I'm leaving. And started off with a consultant who I thought really knew what he was doing, and started my own business, training people in strategy. So I guess I changed from thinking I couldn't run my own business to actually running it, then discovering how hard it is to run your own business. And had quite a few difficult kind of failures, but looking back, obviously, they were the best learning points. It's horrible when you're in it, but you come out the other side and go, actually, that was just the way it needed to be for me to get the lesson.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that would be my limiting belief, thinking I couldn't ever run my own business, and now what do I do?
Run a business, yeah.
and also having the time and freedom. I didn't think I could have that, but actually definitely created it now. I've got my own office in the garden, can go for a walk or a run whenever I like. I'm very free with the relationships that I've got in terms of who I work with. Some people think they just have to put up with people they work with. It's like, well, actually, is that a limiting belief? You don't have to become an independent entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So there's one or two there.
I think I split limiting beliefs into two different categories. I've got the ones that I see in pretty much everyone, universal limiting beliefs that everyone tends to have. And I have the ones that you see specific cases that are, lots of people have them, but it's more specific to individuals and their. And I think Marissa Peer, with her rapid transformational therapy, she has identified one very fundamental limiting belief that pretty much every single human being has in their own way, and just some have it more than others, and because it manifests in different ways, it therefore creates different problems. But her fundamental therapy is all based on the concept that everyone believes they are not enough.
Yes.
And they're not enough in it's her term is not enough, and it could be that some people manifest more as I'm just not good enough, I'm not I'm not strong enough, I'm not wise enough, not clever enough, not intelligent enough, not wily enough. It doesn't matter what it manifests as for you, but there is this fundamental flaw for all of us that we believe we're not enough in some way, and that manifests so radically across our clients, across people I see. This when they're telling me that actions they're going to take achieve a result, and I'm thinking myself, wow, you do not need to do even 20% of what you've just told me, and you are basically going to spend 80% of that effort is wasted, pointless effort that I know is not required to achieve that end result. But the only reason they're doing it is because they think they're not enough, they're not good enough, they come across well enough. They're just something about it's like I must go above and beyond for the world to appreciate that I am enough.
Right.
And I see it in everyone. It's just the choice of how you prioritize the actions you're taking and what you need to do to achieve the goal. This one comes up a lot for me, that I am not enough.
It's quite because basically there's an identity here, isn't there? Everyone's got an identity, and that identity in some way somehow creates a I'm not enough in this area. whether it's public speaking, whether it's managing of money, whether it's deserving to have a partner, or any of those things. It could be I'm not enough. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and so then if those are sort of a few examples, yeah, how do people overcome them?
Onto the overcoming. So obviously we've already mentioned the meditation, right? I think that's fundamentally the most powerful thing to uplift your state. And actually, going back to just where we finished one section where I was talking about your natural state of being, one of the massive things we're all trying to achieve with everything is actually just to elevate our natural state of being, our general emotional level to a higher level at all times. Just if you can keep slowly pushing it upwards so that you're sitting closer to happiness and close to fulfillment at all times, that's where you can really make change in your life and be in a great place to perform. And part of that process requires the overcoming of these limiting beliefs. But I think other than that, as a fundamental, it probably is slightly different for every limiting belief in what the actual overcoming action is. I think the process is similar, because you with every limiting belief, like we have this concept of becoming self-aware, overcome the belief, and then becoming your ideal self is our third part. We'll come to another thing. But like if I give an example that I see a lot in a more specific example, actually no, I'm gonna go with a universal example again, another one, which is that I think everyone generally grows up believing, because no one tells them otherwise, that they have no control over their emotions. It's a fundamental belief we are taught subconsciously that your emotions are the thing that control you.
Right.
And that is, in essence, not true. That's the reason, I talk about meditation and all this all the time. I've come to realize that emotions are not at all controlling. And in fact, we then go one step further and we have this belief that our emotions are directly caused by the world around us. Right. So not only can we not control the emotion itself, but that the world is actually causing those emotions, which in essence means we have a limiting belief that the world itself directly causes our emotional state. Yes. And I think this one is a fundamental belief that we all systemically have, because it's how we're taught subconsciously by everyone around us, and it's not true. And for me, taking out meditation and take that out of the picture, the process I've gone through to really understanding this and being able to overcome it from a foundational level has been a lot of reading, a lot of going out and taking the effort, because by reading people like Joe Dispenza and listening to what they have to say, listening to other mentors, you start to realize that your emotions are just basically historical trigger points, that the world around you is just triggering old emotional habits. That it's nothing, there's no direct causation. It is literally a triggered correlation, that there is something in the external world that for me triggers an old historical experience in one way, for you it would trigger it in another way. I get one emotion, you get a different emotion. So therefore, by proxy, the world can not in any way possibly be the thing that's causing that emotion. If for me it causes one emotion, you it causes another
one. Exactly.
There's no direct relationship there. So therefore it's actually just triggering a historical issue in me. So therefore it's that learning and really, I think, imbibing, so you fundamentally believe it, that we as a race, as human beings, do have control, and we can take action to it's not even controlling our emotions, it's realizing that we can feel them and let them go. So they're going to come because that's our nature. That's how we're created, but that they don't have to then dictate to us how we the next thing. You feel them, and that goes back to that thing I was saying, how do I deal with limiting beliefs? When I feel the feeling, the emotion, I take the time to look at it, to stare at it, to feel it, to realize that is nothing to do with what's happening externally. And that doesn't have to be a meditation. You can just be sitting there and just say, well, okay, what's going on here? No, I'm not going to accept that that's going to control me for the next hour or 2 hours or 2 days. I'm going to just let that one go now. I'm going to just sit at it, look at it and say, right, no, time for you to move on.
I think there's another episode there just on identifying the different types of emotion and knowing when to listen and when not to listen, because there's quite a lot. It could get quite deep quite quickly. But in terms of how I help people, because this is my bag, right? This is my passion. Like every day I wake up and there's a question I want to answer, which is, how do I help the people I work with to overcome, live the best life they can and overcome their limiting beliefs, get the best results they can. So that's the question I live with, and that is why I'm always learning new things, all sorts of intellectual and more spiritual things, to help someone overcome their limiting beliefs and become more of who they want to be. Because I think that's a worthy cause, a worthy purpose, help others become the best version of themselves. So there are so many therapies out there, isn't there? I mean, literally thousands, everything, NLP, counseling, acupuncture, massage, everything. There's so many different types of therapy out there. One of the big things I learned, which I think is entirely true, and I think it resonates with people when I say it, is that it comes down to the person's certainty about whether or not it will help them. Here's the thing, we learn stuff so that we have a path of, these are the actions, or this is the knowledge I need in order to get this outcome. That gives them certainty. It's a feeling of groundedness, of certainty. If someone believes that the doctor who is treating them is going to cure them, guess what? It happens. If they believe that doctor, it doesn't matter, the chemotherapy is not going to work, that is entirely what happens. It doesn't work because the person has to have the certainty and the belief that it's going to work. And then that has the biggest impact. It is our beliefs about things that dictate whether or not it works or not. So that's why there's so many different therapies in effect, because it might be that actually that foot massage is the thing that makes your back better, rather than whatever else might be, acupuncture that seem to not work for some reason. So belief has a massive impact, and we know that from placebos and other things. So that's one, is belief. But then, traditionally we learn lots of tactical things. And so in terms of tactics, a bit more practical here, I have a kind of 5 things that I like to make sure that people understand, that if they have all of them, then they will get results far more easily. So first is having a clarity of vision, because we think in terms of, pictures. 2, it's mindset, understanding how your brain works. And as we've been discussing here, understanding that your thoughts are not you, your thoughts are just the thoughts of your brain, your feelings are just, a signal from the body about what's going on. So, distancing yourself from your thinking and your feeling and observing, and hence the meditation. So that would be number 2. Skills and knowledge, obviously you've got to practice things, you get better at them as you practice. The other one is environment. Like you're in a beautiful environment now, it makes you feel in a certain way. We mentioned how the external world impacts us, but also we can impact it. So it's both ways. Actually, if we change our environment, everything gets easier and better. And lastly, it's the habits of who you are being each day. And it starts with being. I am, and you choose what. I am loving, I am caring, I am abundant. From a place of being, then you start doing things in line with what you believe, live. And then thirdly, you start to have those outcomes, because you're being it, then you're doing it, then you're having it as the outcome. So those are the 5 areas that I think I might have mentioned before, but I do obsess about, because they kind of cover everything to do with personal development and overcoming, limiting beliefs. So that's my thoughts on.
I love that, Dom. I mean, to be honest with you, I was listening to that there, thinking this is literally why we started working with you. This is why we became business partners, because you've made it your life's passion, your life's mission to find out what those tools and tactics are that people can use. And I know everyone benefits from them. Everyone benefits from those things you've just described there, the overview of it. I know when you sit down with someone and spend time with them, listening to what they're saying and their limiting beliefs come out, you've always got a tool. You've always got something that you can talk about and say, I'm sitting there going, yeah, I think you should probably meditate on that. You have, and that comes from your, you've made it a mission to read and learn about that aspect and really find as many tools as possible. It's been one of your, what's made you so powerful in this area, but such a mindset master. And I think it's for everyone to learn. Like you've only done it through going out and learning and reading and listening to people and hearing people, getting mentors of your own, and whatever it has been. It's a massive learning and just exploring this world to say to yourself, what I'm living right now is not my best life. I can live a better life, and it's a worthy cause. It's a worthwhile use of my time to keep exploring and finding better and better and better ways, a culture inside of yourself of continual improvement of your life and happiness levels, so that it's never, in theory, turning that fundamental belief of saying I am not enough into saying, actually, right now, I could have better. Let's keep going for that. Actually, it's not about not being enough. It's about saying, what could be better?
Right. What else could I do?
What else could I do?
Growth mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. Flip it on its head. And we talk about, on a fundamental scale, glass half empty, glass half full. And going back to belief systems, if you can focus on the positive side, never focus on the negative. Always say, don't sit there saying to yourself, I don't have enough. There's not enough money in the bank. There's not enough income. That person, I just don't have the right people around me. Never say that to yourself. It's always about saying, this thing's really good. How could it be better? How could I have more? What's going to be next? And if you focus on the positive side and keep improving that, it's so powerful.
Yes, it is. It's that scientifically proven now. Positive intelligence is what they call it. That ability to see the blessing in the difficult situation, because there always is one, by the way. In fact, I always get quite excited when someone's in a difficult or dark place. It means that there's change coming and they're going to grow and good things are going to happen. But whilst you're in it, it can be quite difficult. But then that's just the ego, thinking so. Look, the different things work for different people, and that's why as a coach, finding all the different methods that could work for that person is part of what I love to do, and I feel very blessed to be able to do it alongside you, because I do not have the skill set that you have around understanding numbers, which is absolutely essential for business, right? So I do kind of one aspect of business, which is the personal side and limiting beliefs and things like that, and you specialize in particular around the finance and the mindset, because actually the mindset is kind of the 80% of it, really. The knowledge is just like, knowledge is absolutely essential, but it's not the thing that's going to make the biggest shift in someone.
So true. And we've seen that over and over again. That's why we're doing this podcast, full stop. Is you can go and listen to anyone talk about the tactics that you're going to use for your business, how you're going to make your strategy work better, how do you analyze deals better, how do you make sure you've got all your numbers right. Well, all of these basically business strategical tactics, they're helpful, but they're not going to make the difference to your success in the way that what we're talking about today is. And we've seen that in ourselves, like in our own business. The moment that we let go of certain beliefs, we suddenly shoot. We're doing all the same actions, but the business flourishes suddenly. And you realize, you look back and you say, right, what were we doing differently? Nothing. We did nothing differently. All that changed was a fundamental belief, and therefore way of being, way of acting, a way of associating with everyone around us just shifted, and the change happened. And it's magical. You're like, wow, that's just magic just happened. Someone cast a spell on me. That's what it feels like. And we see that with our clients. You have clients who they just feel like they've been trudging and struggling for it could be years. And then a few things change over a couple of months, and you manage to instill a new belief in them. A new fundamental belief gets, changes their blueprint, and they just lighten up, and their business shifts, and like the whole thing starts to flow. They start to take better actions. They start to prioritize different things, and those actions get different results. And suddenly deals start coming through. Investors start saying yes, or they have investors where before they're like, I don't know where the investors are going to come from. And suddenly they're just surrounded by them. We didn't tell them anything different. We've given them advice for where to look, but actually they could still be looking in the same places and not seeing the investors. But they change their fundamental beliefs, the limiting beliefs disappear, and they see with new eyes, and the investor is right there in front of them.
Right.
And magic happens. It's amazing. And I think one of the major beliefs, for example, that Jackie's overcome, and she talked about in her episode, her levels of perfectionism have been huge. And there's a limiting belief that always goes alongside that. And I see it definitely in, certain types of personalities are prone to that one, which is that, things must go perfectly or else I failed. This must be perfect or else I'm a failure. As a human being, that my business is not good enough, and that concept of perfectionism, it's there, like it's underneath you, undermining all of your actions, your priorities. And we all know that in order to be successful in business, You have to be using your time super wisely. You cannot be wasting your time. And perfectionism is a massive time waster, because you're going to end up spending twice as long or 3 times as long on something to make it perfect, rather than getting it out there and moving on to the next thing you as the business owner need to do. And it's a huge underlying factor. So I want to ask you, Dom, someone comes to you, you have a client, you've identified perfectionism as a primary limiting belief system that they're adhering to. Going to a more specific use of your tools and techniques, how you work, how would you advise someone like that to improve?
So perfectionism is another form of attachment, and the things that keep us back is thinking that life has to be this way. I'll be happy when it's like this. So it comes back to what we discussed before, which is around letting go. We have to release the idea that it has to be a certain way. I mean, I was discussing yesterday in the huddle with Jackie that what's my issue with perfectionism. It's like I'm sort of like so not bothered about perfectionism. I'm so relaxed. I'm horizontal, but then that in itself is like, maybe I'm so unattached that actually I don't get anything done. And so we need to kind of balance. Yes, we need to take action, as you said before, but we need to let go of the outcome. And enjoy this present moment, and enjoy the journey that you're on of creating it, but don't be attached to a particular outcome. Be open to whatever happens, because actually the universe has got your back, and it wants you to do well. And when difficulties happen, it's the universe, I think, kind of bashing you on the side to try and get you back on course. And so the more detached and enjoying of life we are in every moment, the more things tend to flow most easily. So yeah, with a perfectionist, it's about letting go of the attachment to the perfectionism and enjoying the journey and being present for it, rather than worrying about the future of how it may or may not turn out. That's kind of the simple short answer.
And I guess that's you've chanced upon one of the most important aspects of I think personal development is the ability to let go, the ability to let go of outcome, let go of attachments, let go of expectations, let go of your emotions. Letting go, there's a whole book by, going back to Hawkins, who did The Scale of Consciousness. He has a book called Letting Go, which is also a very, very impressive book.
One of my favorites. Yeah, absolutely.
But even though you can write a whole book on it, the end result is actually very simple.
Yes.
To let go it's actually a very simple thing. It's just very hard to do. Have you got any advice? Because I think for me, perfectionism and letting go are a fundamental that most people will have. There's some people who are not going to worry about this at all, but when you talk about just general tools and techniques to help people to let go of that, do you have advice that you give?
So because we are basically a program, our brain is a thinking machine, we have to reprogram our mind to make create the habit, the thinking, the feeling of release, of letting go, feeling lighter. You mentioned, people feel lighter and that's the shift that they have, and that's when they start getting different results. So it's a deliberate practice, which means that you self-command, and I guess it's back to the meditation of, I'm choosing to focus my mind on this thing. I'm choosing to let go of the attachment of the perfectionism. I'm choosing, and each time, several times a day, you are directing your brain to focus on the thing that you want to focus on, not on what it is distracted by, because of course there's lots of distractions. So it's that deliberate practice that creates a neural pathway in the brain, which means that, at any moment I can choose to let go. It's just like the Buddhist monks and others who can get into a deep state of meditation very quickly. It's because they're well practiced. Same with anything that you get good at. You need to get good at letting go by practicing it on a regular basis. 4 or 5 times a day, just remind yourself. And it's that self-command, as they call it, which creates the thinking, which allows you to then get there quickly.
Amazing. Practice makes perfect. I had that drilled into me when I was
exactly.
So if you're struggling with perfectionism, then become perfect at not being perfect. That's the answer, right?
There we go. Yeah. So I'm a master of that.
Oh god.
Brilliant.
I think probably covered most things now. I just wanted to highlight, because I had a good brainstorm before we did this call, just thinking about various other limiting beliefs. And I do think it's really helpful for people to hear what they might be. So a couple of other things I came across in my thoughts were that a lot of people just, as soon as you think that something is impossible, you've created a limiting belief.
Right.
When you've kind of mentioned slightly here. I've heard one that is, if I let go of control. So letting go is really important. But if I let go, and these are for people who are more controllers, who want to control the world, that everything will fall apart. I was definitely one of these people. I remember having this conversation with Jackie about 5 years ago, just literally being, but if I don't do this, if I let go of that, it's all gonna fail.
Right.
It's all fall apart.
Exactly.
The world's gonna end.
Right.
So not true. It's ridiculously untrue. So I think that's one for people to be aware of. If I let go of control, it's all gonna fall apart. It's not gonna fall apart. That's not the truth. And there is a balance. It's not about just letting go and just ignoring. We call that just burying your head in the sand. Right. It's about striking that balance between overseeing, checking in what's going on. So you're not just like ignoring, but you are actually checking in, but you're not trying to control and micromanage the world. Another one I was thinking of was, I must act in a way that society considers to be acceptable.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Especially with our schooling. Behave. Do it this way.
And I think with this one, it's again, people have this, and they use it as a rationale that they must follow this. Is like, oh, but if you don't, follow what society has to do, we're going to end up in chaos and people are going to be killing each other all of the place and stealing and robbing. It's like, it's balance. We're not saying go out and murder people and think that that's fine. It's about looking with a middle ground and saying, I don't have to act in a certain way because I think other people are going to look down on me if I act that way. It's like, it's you are your own individual, and the other people's opinions are their own opinions, and that shouldn't affect you and your actions in life. And that's, there's a middle ground on that. So that's another one that I think
what other people think. Yeah, absolutely. And we could use the wealth dynamics and go around every sort of personality type and identify them. But I think for the sake of time, we won't go into that, but perhaps we can have another conversation about it on another podcast. Yeah,
so true. And I think the last one I want to leave it on, actually, as a limiting belief that was a big shift for me, one of my paradigm shifts, is that the belief that happiness will happen, the life I dream of will happen once I've succeeded at my goals.
Right.
See this from the hard workers out there. I think I can have that once I've done this.
Yes.
That'll happen in the end once I've achieved this. So I must work really hard now, all hours under the sun. I don't need to be happy now. That's fine. I will be happy once I've got the big house, once I've got the car.
Right.
And I think that if anyone here listening can just remove that limiting belief entirely and say, no, it's all about happiness now.
Yes.
And the happiness now will that is what will create the end result.
Yes.
Shift it around, swap it on its head.
Yes.
Happy now to create the success. Don't think I don't need to be happy now. I don't need to have, the time to myself, whatever it is.
That's 100% with you there, Dave. That is, and what a wonderful insight. And that's the best way to end, in a way, is happiness is now or never. So choose to be happy now, because you can in this moment. There's nothing stopping you other than your own thoughts. So choose to command that into your thoughts. I'm happy and abundant now.
Thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. A reminder that our brand new Raising Finance Formula workshop is launching next week, 7th of September. It's 9:30 till 1:30, and you can head on over to our website, property-strategy.com/RFF for the Raising Finance Formula. We're going to be covering all different facets that hold you in place and put financial blockages to doing more deals. So from structuring to pipelines to offering, and also, very importantly, the mindset behind raising finance. So you'll be joined by myself, Dave and Dom, attacking the raising finance issue from multiple different sides. So if that's something that you're interested to join us, you can check out the details on our website. And next week on the show, we are going to be talking about outsourcing and delegating. And is it better to hire too early, or is it better to hire too late? Dave and I have had a lot of very painful lessons along the way when it's come to building a great team. So you're going to be joined by the two of us, really starting to scratch the surface of what is a massive topic that we're going to be talking about many more times over the weeks and months ahead. So if you want to know more about outsourcing and delegating, then make sure you tune in next week. And until then, have a fantastic week ahead.